Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
A fate decided.
Life without the possibility of parole.
The Oxford community getting some justice today for what happened on November 30th, 2021.
For the rest of our lives, we have to live our worst nightmare.
Hours of tear-soaked testimony inside an Oakland County courtroom as the families and friends of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Justin Schilling, and Hannah St. Juliana come face to face with the Oxford shooter.
Believe me, we will never forget about you, ever.
The survivors struggling to find a path forward.
It has been 738 days of reliving the tragedy in my head every single hour.
Trying to rebuild after being stripped of their innocence.
I deserve to be a child that day. A student who made it to her class, not someone's target practice.
Despite the pain, a message of hope rising from the sorrow.
We are only going to get better. More healed, more loved, and more loving towards others.
Proof that Oxford Strong is more than a phrase, it's a way of life. Breaking right now, Ethan Crumbley will spend the rest of his life behind bars with no chance of parole.
And right before Judge Kwame Rowe handed down his sentence, the shooter addressed the court. Take a listen.
I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do. I have lied, been not trustworthy. I've hurt many people, and that's what I've done, and I'm not denying it, but that's not who I plan on to be. Whatever sentence it is, I do plan to be better than I am. I don't know if you believe that.
Rod Maloney is following the hours of emotional testimony today from people whose lives have been impacted by the tragedy. We're going to get to Rod in just a moment.
We're going to get things started with our Sean Lay, who was in the courtroom just a few feet away from the shooter for the entire hearing.
Yeah, so Sean, first off, give us a sense of what it was like being in the courtroom today.
It was a complete journey for any family member, friend in there, any part of the community, any prosecutor or attorney or a judge, and members of the media. So intense from the start. When the shooter had written down that he wanted the parents to suffer due to his act, that feeling of suffering was over this courtroom for 2 to 3 hours. It was so intense as people were telling their incredibly raw stories of what this has done to them and their families, taking their children away, injuring their children, or having to be with your best friend as she lie in a pool of blood. Absolutely devastating. It was so gut-wrenching. However, this is a journey, so it was a long day, and these details were put out. But at the end, I'm listening to Judge Rowe, I'm watching the shooter, and I'm watching family members, and the mother of Nicole, the mother of Madison Baldwin. Just the relief on her face when the sentence was read. You could feel it, and you could feel the relief throughout the room. Talked to Keegan's mom and dad just now. They said the same thing. The feeling of relief, it was a brutal day, but it's something everyone had to just take a step and go through. And then Madison's mom told me she was not going to show any emotion at all, not going to give him any reason to be upset, show any emotion, and she didn't. She stood up there and read and just spoke from the heart. It was amazing.
Now, Sean, all this playing out while you were sitting right next to the shooter, did he show any emotion at all?
At first, he had his head down. I kept noting this the entire time. Was he listening? Was he sleeping? At one time, during a break, he stood up and kind of listed forward. We think because his hands were shackled and deputies kind of brought him back. So I monitored every hearing here, and he usually mumbles or has hair in his face. Today he comes in, has a haircut, glasses were on. He's much bigger than you would think, very tall, and he's gained weight. He's on medication, and so at one point, the only time he showed emotion, he was looking down. One of the best friends said, "Look at me," and said, "You are a coward and you have no self-esteem." And he started doing this like he was agreeing. So he's listening, and he started showing that, yes, I'm in agreement with you. Then they said, "Do you have anything to say?" And he shot right up with a strong voice, because usually on these Zooms, he kind of mumbles, doesn't say much. He said, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." And we all heard what he said.
Yeah, indeed. Talk to us about the judge and, the sentence that he handed down.
Watched him very closely throughout this entire process. He has 4 children of his own. During today, I wish I had his focus. He was focused on every person and every single word. He was measuring every single word going into his decision. He read every letter that was sent to him, every piece of evidence. He used that evidence in giving his sentence. And then one thing, guys, you probably noticed this, and the families noticed it too. Judge Rowe used his voice as the gavel. He kind of changed his voice at the end to really hammer home the point that this was justice. This is his decision, life without parole. He backed it up. That was interesting. And like I said, 4 kids. Guys, he took the bench. He was elected in August of 2021.
Right.
3 months later,
Right
the shooting.
this
right
happened.
before.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, Sean, we appreciate your insight. You've been on the story since the very beginning. We'll see you a little bit later for the news at 6 with more unpacking of what we saw today in court. We appreciate it, Sean.